Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another NinjaOne live stream. I am Jonathan Crow, Director of Community here at NinjaOne, and very excited once again to be seeing familiar names in the chat, of course, but also to have these two guests here with me today. This is something that I've been wanting to get these folks on for quite a while. They've been on my radar talking about a really massive undertaking that they've been going through for, well, I mean, over a year, right? And it's their journey through getting CMMC level 2 certified, one of the first MSPs in the country to do so. Not only did they go through all that, they've been very public about the whole journey. I mean, I can't tip my hat enough to Bobby and Kaleigh here and the team over at Axiom. They have been sharing every step of the way their learnings, and they are here. You should totally take advantage of the opportunity that you have on this stream to ask them questions because they're here today to share even more. So let me introduce you guys, and you can give a little bit more about your background. Bobby, let's start with you. Bobby Guerra, founder, CEO at Axiom.
Yep. Like you said, founder, CEO, owner of Axiom. Started back in 2002. So we've been doing MSP services for quite a while, but we started our CMMC journey roughly maybe 3.5 to 4 years ago. And that's I guess we're based in Jacksonville, but we have people all over the United States. Like Kaleigh is in Knoxville. I'm in Jacksonville. We have people all over.
That's right. Yeah, Kaleigh from Knoxville, near where I grew up in Johnson.
Yes, I forgot that. Well, my name is Kaleigh Floyd. I am the marketing/sales director at Axiom. I've been with the company, I guess, on staff for about 8 years now. But I've been a part of the company for a long time because Bobby also happens to be my dad. We don't have the same last name anymore because I'm married and moved out, but he is my dad. And so, yeah, we started our CMMC journey about 3 or 4 years ago, maybe now. Bobby started it first, and then he brought this thing over to us, and he's like, we got to figure this out. They're going to need implementers for this, and we need to figure out how to do it. And I was like, okay. And so, yeah, it's been about like 4 years in the making. So it's pretty cool to have that certification next to our name now. We're really excited.
Huge differentiator. And I mean, a huge bet that you all made. And Bobby, I mean, seeing that, navigating the twists and turns of what this is exactly going to look like. I mean, passing through what's actually going to be involved in the certification, what are the requirements going to be, how are they going to be enforced? I know a lot of that stuff has kind of, like I said, there's been twists and turns about it. And so you navigating through that and really staying true to it and investing, it's been a big bet for you guys.
Yeah, we kind of equate it to being on a train that is coming into the station and that station's still being finished and built. Like who does that? Well, that's us. That's what we signed up for. And kind of the reason why that example sort of fits it is there's two main rules that drive the CMMC program. There's the 32 CFR, which defines what the program's all about. That went into final rule in December of last year. And now the second rule, which is the 48 CFR rule, that is going to weaponize that rule. In other words, contracts can start seeing that have this verbiage, the 48 CFR in it, that call back to the program that they just codified last year. So what you're going to start seeing is this year, I think Ryan Bonner refers to it as kind of like splinter cell like situations where MSPs are going to have these.
Oh yeah, he said
clients.
Sleeper cells.
Yeah, these sleeper cells that are going to just wake up. Your client's going to go, I've got this requirement this year that I have to get for CMMC, and we've been a client of y'all's for 4 or 5 years. We need to get that this year. Can you help us do that? And you're like, what? That's a big deal. What did you mean? You should have told us that sooner. So I mean, there's a lot of these MSPs that are going to get bushwhacked by this if they don't understand and they don't know what their clients are exactly doing, especially if they're doing work for the Department of Defense. There's a high probability they're going to get pulled into this compliance requirement.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, before we get into the discussion, Robin, maybe we can bring up the deck here, and I do want to bring out a couple of comments. I mean, I imagine that a lot of you watching this, you know what CMMC is.
Mhm.
You are thinking about going down the path yourself, or maybe you're already in it. We've got Bradley. I love this comment actually. I don't want to become CMMC compliant, but I have to. And then Bobby, I know that so Josh, who's super active in our Discord community, shout out to the Discord folks there. We can bring up a join code if you're not a member yet. Please jump in there. There's lots of good conversations happening. Oh, look at that. Robin's quick on the draw.
Wow, Robin's good.
But yeah, I mean, Josh, I love this comment from Josh. I know that this is something that his company has been looking at, and exactly what you're talking about, right, Bobby? First of all, shout out to your guys' podcast, which we'll have to drop a link in the chat for following that. So he's been following along your journey there, but this is a huge goal for them. They lost a client because they weren't ready yet. And so I know Josh has been excited to have you all on and to learn from you all.
Yeah, it's something that you really, you either are all in or you're not. Just that simple. With CMMC, I've talked with my team, and after we went through and built our system to get certified, in case people aren't really familiar with sort of how that process works, you pay a company to come and audit you. So you pick who's going to put the gloves on and do all of the investigative analysis of your system. And so when we had that done, it requires a high level of understanding of the CMMC program, all of the compliance requirements, the technologies involved, the documentation involved. You've got to know it from start to finish. Because there's, the refs for a football game don't show up with grace in mind for people who don't understand the game. They're like, I'm showing up. You get on the line. When I blow the whistle, you snap the ball. And it's just that simple. I throw a flag and you're moving back. And that's just sort of how it works. That's how the auditors are. They expect you to have that understanding. And if you don't, it's not going to go well. And it won't go well for your clients. Like for us, it took us like 8 months from when we knew what we were doing to build our GCC high tenant that we had in a compliant fashion so we could support our clients out of it. And if you've never really dived into this, you've got a whole learning time frame that you're going to have to pick up to understand before you can really do it. So it takes planning and thought. And then how are you going to move your clients through it? And there's cost involved. There's a lot of challenges around all of that.
Yeah, and something I will emphasize is that the DoD does not have a lot of sympathy for this preparation. And the reason is because NIST 800-171 controls, which is what this is based off of, is not new. This has been around, and this has been a requirement, just not as strict as what CMMC has made it to this day. And so people have, or when I say people, I mean contractors or government contractors have been attesting to this in their own way for many years. They just haven't been actually doing it. And so
it's amazing how many companies have signed on these agreements for years stating that they have these practices implemented. But after the Inspector General did some audits back in 2020, the DoD got so upset they kind of took their toys and left, and then came back with the CMMC program and said, all right, guys, we're not trusting anymore. We're going to force you to get assessed because we don't think you're doing it. And now we're going to know whether you're doing it.
Exactly.
Well, I know a big part of this is having to show your adherence to these controls, but it also isn't just about you; it's about the vendors you work with, right? And the tools that you're using. And so we're going to get into your journey here, and just want to bring up, we got Cody Bell from our team who's joining us, and Cody is on our sales side, but he is working primarily with orgs who are requiring, in a lot of cases, some government orgs that require FedRAMP certification. And so as Axiom's been going through their journey, NinjaOne's been going through a journey too. And I haven't been doing this. I feel like a lot of this has been falling on our security and our product team. We've essentially had to build a whole nother instance of Ninja that can help us be meet the FedRAMP requirements. And so
Right.
we are now, as of, Cody, when was it? It was pretty recent, right? In the last month or so, we're officially listed on the FedRAMP marketplace as FedRAMP ready. And as Bobby, I know that you and Kaleigh have referred to with your own certification. Of course, that just means that our journey is just getting started,
Right.
and we've got more to go. But
Mhm.
that was a great milestone.
Yeah.
And Cody's going to be
Awesome.
talking a little bit more about what that means
Mhm.
and how that can potentially help folks who are listening in, like Josh and Bradley and others who are going down this journey, how NinjaOne can help with your own CMMC journey. So with that, yeah, I mean, we've talked about this a little bit, Bobby, but basically getting into your journey here, and referring to as climbing the mountains.
Yeah.
Um,
Because there's two that you have to climb.
yeah, let's get into it.
The as an MSP, CMMC is infinitely harder for you than it
Mhm.
is for a client to get level 2. And the reason why that is, and if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, is getting your organization certified. And if all you're worried about is yourself, it's a lot easier because all you're doing is working on the policies and processes for you, and that's it.
Right.
Is it compliant? Do you have a system that's compliant? Auditor comes in and they check it, and you're good. But that's not how it works with an MSP. They're going to come in and audit you just like you were going to receive that data. But most MSPs aren't going to be receiving the CUI. And to be perfectly clear, in the CMMC 32 CFR, MSPs are not technically required to get level 2 certified. It's just advantageous to be level 2 certified. The big reason why that is it forces you to really learn the system if you've gone through it yourself, so you can more appropriately support your client, right?
Right.
And getting certified, it's sort of like the way I look at it is do you want to work with a doctor, or do you want to work with your aunt who knows some home remedy medicines, right? to work on your stuff. And it's like, those are sort of the differences between that, because it's forcing you, that whole organization has gone through an audit, so they know that. So we go through our audit, but now we have to have the system that has gone through the audit, that's got level 2 certified. It's got to be built in such a way that you can now support your clients out of it in a way that helps them on their journey. And if you think about it, Jonathan, you're building that for clients you probably haven't even met yet, right? That are going to be coming your way. They're going to have these needs.
All different needs too.
All tons of different needs. How are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? So it's not just about getting your level 2 and proving you have it. It's now, how do I support the client? So we basically stood up a whole new company for the most part. I mean, we didn't create a new LLC or anything, but we built a whole new container, a new tenant in GCC High. We built a whole new processes, change controls, policies, procedures, all that. We built it all up. And for us to support the clients, knowing that we have to now share that with them, so they're going to have their own system security plan and how those are all going to tie together. That is infinitely difficult. There's no peer group you can go to that knows this. This is all new math that's sort of being developed for any MSP that's coming into this space. And that's really what you're looking down the barrel when you're going to do that challenge. And so when you realize this is what you're having to do, you can start to understand it's a very massive undertaking. And there's so many permutations, like you're not going to know it all before you step in the space. You're just going to have to come out in faith and sort of work your way through that. Just what you have to do, I think, first and foremost is, kind of the Hippocratic oath, do no harm. So when you're stepping into that space, make sure you're doing it in a way that's respectful and understanding of the challenges that people you're going to be working with. If you're not prepared or qualified to do it, don't do it until you're ready.
So we've got some great questions coming in, and I'll go ahead and pull them up. And I think some of these we'll get to a little bit later, but first one's from Josh. And I think this speaks to what you're saying there, Bobby, and really speaks to Ninja with FedRAMP too. I mean, we had to build a separate instance. I mean, there's no way that we could try to do both of these things. But I'm curious. So Josh has this question. Let's just say that you've got 3 out of the 40 clients are under the CMMC umbrella, but the controls need to be in place for the other 37 or only applicable clients. How would you answer this question?
Yeah. So in my mind, I've had this argument with many people that want to kind of sort of step into the space and not fully commit to it. And they're like, I think I can support 1 or 2 clients and I can make this work. But when you think about the education, the cost of just getting certified, or let's say you don't go get certified, you want to just kind of help that 1 or 2 client, the time and material to get up to speed and build that system to support them is so difficult to do. It doesn't really work math wise if you try to do it for 1 or 2 people. So if you're going to step into this space, you really need to say, we're coming into this space and we're really going to try our best to own it as best we can. And it's going to be a whole vertical that you're going to work and walk.
Yeah.
Trying to do it for just 1 or 2 clients, the math just doesn't add up. That would be like, I've got a cold, so now I'm going to become a doctor to help myself. Like, you don't know, you would never do that, right?
No.
That's not a thing, because there's just so much effort to get that knowledge and capability to do that thing.
Yeah.
But
I completely agree.
But if you want to go in the medical field, you become a doctor,
Yeah.
right? So that's what you're going to go do.
Well,
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about, kind of goes back into, you mentioned this being a 3 to 4 year thing for you. And obviously, a lot of that was, maybe if you're going to be doing it again now, especially with everything in the state of things now, maybe that time frame looks a little bit different. But going back to that initial, why was this something that you looked at and you thought, okay, this can be something that we specialize in, and that's going to help us differentiate, and we're really forming our whole company around this drive? Can you talk a little bit more about that before we go further?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good question. I get that a lot. They're like, why did you do this? Like, what made you kind of step into this space? Are you crazy?
The answer is yes.
Yes,
a little bit crazy.
Yeah, I think you have to be really passionate. The big reason why we stepped into this space is we saw 2 things happening in the industry. First, we saw a lot of M&A and more of a fight to the bottom, pricing and quality wise, in our industry, and it concerned me.
Yeah.
Also, at the same time, I started seeing compliance really starting to take off, and a lot of pressure from different locations, the DoD being one of them. But you're having, state level requirements starting to happen, all these things that are having to push compliance requirements. And we love being an MSP. That's something that we like doing. And when I saw that CMMC, the scope of it, because if you think about it, there's like 80,000 known-ish, 80 to 100,000 known organizations that the DoD is aware of that they feel are going to have to go through the level 2 certification. But those are the ones they only know about. The DoD doesn't know about all the subcontractors because of the way the rules are written. They can't have connectivity with those subs because they are scared they might dodge and steal, potential clients. So it's actually written so that they can't go that deep to know who's there, and that's on purpose. So there's easily double or triple or quadruple that number of organizations that are going to have to really go through this level 2, because the requirements flow down to those subcontractors all the way when that data hits them. And so what you're seeing is all these companies, these small companies, need MSPs to do it. And I'm like, there's no one who's going to want to really do this. And if we step into this space, we're going to have just a great opportunity for us to really do what we're passionate and love to do. And it's not going to be something that easy. And the organizations are going to have to listen to us because the requirements are forcing this onto them. So it's going to be a different discussion. Like, Kaleigh can talk about the sales process. It is totally different when you're talking with a company that needs this. Right, Kaleigh?
Yeah. Well, it's, I feel like this actually goes with one of the things that Josh said in the chat of the problem is really the clients getting on board with this. It's super interesting because when I'm having sales conversations, a lot of it is teaching a class on CMMC to the people that are coming to us. And then the other half is selling them on our way that we do CMMC, which obviously we built up and worked really hard on. So we believe we can really take care of these people, especially small to medium-sized businesses that don't have a lot of money for a whole internal IT staff to be able to do this kind of stuff. And so to do this process with them and to talk with these people and these contractors through CMMC, a lot of them are showing up saying, I just have to do this and I don't know what the heck to do. you
Right.
know? And so some of that means just me just being a person and just being honest and transparent and letting them know as much information as I can in that call. And sometimes they don't even, end up choosing us, but hopefully by the end of the call, they know some more information just even
Mhm.
about a system security plan so they know what to look for, because some of these people don't even know the questions to ask when trying to find the right provider, and could totally shoot themselves in the foot if they're not careful, because this is like literally helping them win bids and contracts. And if they don't have it in time, they could lose a lot of money. So,
Yeah, and I think there's some other things is we knew that there was a profit, there was a larger potential for revenue there, as well as a greater chance of being in a space that you're going to be sorely needed,
yeah.
and it's going to be kind of a greenfield opportunity. Like our sales pipeline 6 times more than what we're used to seeing. I mean, it has just we're talking to potential clients every week. And it's around 2 to 3 times more of what a normal MSP would charge for that service, right? And when you have an MSP connectivity with someone that's doing CMMC, like if they leave you, they have to get re-audited again, more than likely.
Hmm.
Because the connectivity between them and you, like we complete about 50 to 60% of the controls that they have to do. Like they're dependent solely for the most part on us.
Yes.
And then there's more of that that's shared around that.
Mhm.
So because of that, if a client walks away from an MSP that's doing CMMC work with them, they're probably going to have to get re-audited because the other MSP that's going to step in this space isn't going to be the same. They're not
Yeah.
going to have the same stuff. And so when we looked at that, we're like, man, we're going to have the client's going to understand they have to make changes. So we're not having to argue with them necessarily around that. They're coming to us because they have that need. And then we're going to have a much more deeper relationship with them and working together on this.
Mhm.
And it's not just about, hey, we got them because we're sticky. Like it's super dangerous too, because there's risk with us being connected with that client. So we want to make sure that we're connecting with the client who's serious, who really wants to do this. Because if they're like dragging their feet, or they don't want to do it, or they want to do it the wrong way all the time, you're constantly fighting them, you're never going to finish it. You're both going to get frustrated with each other. So you really have to, in that sales process, like Kaleigh's talking about, really know the client and
Yeah.
understand.
Mhm.
It's very different, very unique. And that's a long answer to answer that question. There's so much unique way. We
Mhm.
thought that's how it would be, and it's really turned out to be true from
Mhm.
that space, and that's the reason why we got in it.
Well, no, I
Mhm.
mean, amazing. I mean, this is a big portion of what I was excited to have you guys on for. Just uh, telling that portion too. You made a big bet. I'm constantly talking about differentiation and what it takes to actually see a need that can really set you guys apart in terms of, okay, we can solve this in a very specific way that's meaningful. And you guys took a big bet on it, and it's already paying off, which is
Yeah.
super cool to see. So question that Josh has was asking, and David in the chat are having some conversation back and forth. Just to get clarification, are you guys only, is this all of your business now, or is that in the direction that this is heading, or do you
Great
still
question.
have or do you still have other clients that you're I mean, I imagine you still have some that you've been with you for years and they're not down this path, but are you consciously going to, like, this is going to be really it for you?
Okay, so I'll shoot super straight here with
Yeah.
you. We had 2 clients that were looking at potentially going down this path that sort of started. This is like going back in time 3 or 4 years ago, that were kind of like, hey, we're thinking about doing this. Where are you guys at? And we're like, man, this is great. This is a good opportunity for us to work with you, learn it, get into the space, but we're not going to move you down that path yet until we're ready.
Yeah.
So we'll hit you back when we're ready. And, I kind of think, yeah, this will be 6 months, 8 months for us to sort of figure out how to do it. Like 2 years later, I realized this is taking a very long time. And so I hired Adam Evans, who's our compliance coordinator. And I'm like, I'm going to need a partner to work on this thing, to do it together, to go down this path, because it was just going to be so hard to do.
Mhm.
And the client's like, when are you going to get back to me, Bobby? I'm like, when we're ready. I'm going to have to hit you back. And so funny story is neither of those decided to eventually do it when we were ready. Isn't that funny? Like neither of them did, but we knew that that would be such a green field that we would get new business. And because we were so focused on getting ready, I told Kaleigh, like, honey, as my daughter, I call her honey. So if someone's tuning in later, I don't normally call people that work with me honey, but
No, just
I'm
me.
like, Kaleigh, you're going to have to figure out how to attack this from the marketing perspective and how we're going to push this. So we turned the spigot off from our normal sales process and started ramping up for our CMMC process. And because of that, we didn't get a new client for like a year.
Yeah, you gave me a little bit too much of an advance because you thought it was going to be shorter period of time. So I was ready, and then I wasn't, and then I was ready, and then I wasn't.
Yeah, she's like, whenever you're ready, we can start.
How about this?
Like,
how about now?
Not yet. And so eventually, once we were like, okay, now we're ready. We have a system that we feel that we can get audited. We want to get it validated for ourselves. At that point, we still didn't have a single client yet. We were all betting that this is going to work for us. And so it was just money being spent to do it. And so last year is at the end of it, we went through a mock assessment. So we paid a C3PO to mock assess us to go through, because at the time the final rule hadn't come out yet. So they did their best of assessing where we're at, and we passed it with a perfect 110 score. And so then we were, hey, we're here. We put our flag in the ground. We said we got a perfect 110 in our mock assessment. Now we're going to start bringing on new clients. In that time frame, the moment we turned that on, we grew by 30 to 40% from August to this month. Like
awesome.
And we'll probably almost double in size in this probably by the end of the year, if not some of next year. That's how much growth potential that we're seeing is going through there. And so if you line it up right, even if you have a few clients, but you commit fully to it, there's a tremendous amount of potential there for MSPs to do that.
Yeah, so shooting straight, we will probably end up being fully CMMC. And this ties back into what Bobby was saying earlier, CMMC is a business decision for an MSP. It really is not, it does not align or make sense to have your whole company or even just build a separate company with just a few people that does, 3 clients. Like, you're going to end up getting more than 3 clients if you do it right. And it's going to end up turning into a much bigger thing, no matter what. And so, I mean, if you're doing it right.
Yeah, you got to go all in. Like, it's just the effort and the level of dedication.
It changed us. It changed us as a company for the better, which is great. It's excellent. And we really do pride ourselves in excellent IT support and MSP support since we started in 2002. And I do believe that we did a great job. But it was really hard to market us in this environment as an MSP because so many MSPs have dramatically low prices for like ridiculous support. And it's kind of crazy hard to market yourself as an MSP. But with this perspective in this environment, there's a lot more that can differentiate yourself from the competition, specifically a certification. You can't really, I mean, people might try to lie about that, but at the end of the day, you can't lie about
you can't fake a certification. Like, I mean, I guess you could try, but that's illegal. But
the
reality is, like, when you're looking at the auditor in the eye, it's like 3 to 4 days to go through. And we're going to be at like MSP GeekCon this year, actually doing a demo, like a mock like assessment for people to see there. So we're setting it up. We're going to be doing that. We're only going to go through like one control, but it'll let people see like what the audit would look like if you're an MSP sitting with a client. So that's something that's going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, that just goes back to how amazing it's been, how transparent you've been and how much that you've shared. Super valuable. I know Josh mentioned he watches the podcast. We shared a link here in the chat. And just another example of you guys really helping others follow in your footsteps. So a couple other questions here before we move on. And I'm bringing back up our slides, our guiding points. And I see that we've covered some of this. But can we go back into this question, which anything else that the audience should consider, and what would have been helpful before you all started the process.
Yeah,
Let's start making, we've talked about it kind of in general ways. Let's get into specifics a little bit more. Yeah, what would have been great for you to have?
Knowing that it's two journeys, two separate challenges that you have to climb, and the getting a system that's going to help your clients get level 2 is the harder of the two challenges. You know, when we were going through getting our assessment, our level 2, and getting our system validated and passed, I was like, gosh, this is crazy hard. But after I passed it and we started ramping up about, all right, how are we going to do change control between us and our client? You know, how are we going to do that? We have to build a system that when the client wants to add a user, they're going to flow through that change to us. We track it on our side and we kick it back to them. You know, and you're like, well, of course you got to do that. But what does that look like for an MSP? Like in the weeds, like the real rubber meets the road. And there's just hundreds and hundreds of conversations like that through just the normal process of how you normally work with an MSP client. But how do you do it with a client that has CMMC requirements? How are you going to do those things? Because you don't want to do stuff that's going to sacrifice their CMMC journey, right? Client wants to get this application installed. Sure, no problem. I'll go ahead and do it real quick. Wait a minute. Is that an approved app? Is that app on their approved list? Is that user allowed to have that? Did the person that make the request, the authorized user in the following the process of CMMC? You know, so those are all things that you now have to start thinking differently of how you go to do that. And it really forces you to start to re-examine how you're going to approach that. So that education and learning is the hardest part. And the second hardest part, I would say, is throwing out your tools, which we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But we had to throw all of our tools out for the most part because a lot of them weren't written in such a way that were compliant enough that we felt like we could walk a client through and they would pass using those tools.
Right.
So it was just crazy hard. So you basically strip out a lot of the tools you have, and now you have to become a doctor at understanding a lot of these things that you've just never done before.
Yeah.
Luckily now there are things like the MSP, what is it, Kaleigh, Brian Hubbard's
MSP CyberX.
Yeah, MSP CyberX is nonprofit, and it's revolved around helping MSPs. There's a charge for it, but like I'm a member. Like people will reach out to me sometimes. They're like, "Hey, can I meet with you and you like level me up? Like kind of do a TLDR, kind of too long didn't read, just help level me up real quick." Like I understand you want to reach out and ask me to help you shortcut the process that I had to go through. But what would be really cool is if you watch the podcast and learned
we took the time to do.
And also hopped into peer groups and other things, because then you'll able to get up a lot faster, because what I can tell you in a 30 or 40-minute conversation is not really what you're going to, you know.
Here's do you have it pulled up too,
I want to make sure. Is this the right one?
That's right.
Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, so we dropped a link in the chat here for this too. And this is great because Josh was asking, you know, he's a fan of the podcast. He's listening to it. But is there any other places that you'd recommend going to? And so
that's a good place to go, because they're like I'm in it. Kevin Mann, I believe, is in it. And Toby. Those are all guys that have their own MSPs. That both of those people that I mentioned actually, not only are they MSPs, but they're also C3POs. In other words, they can actually C3PAOs. They can actually do real audits for organizations. So they're auditors as well as MSPs. They actually decided to do it even harder. And you get to, you know, you can talk with those people and their staff and be on that. So it's not that, so to them, like they're more apt to want to communicate and share with you about what's going on if you join a group like that, because that shows that you're really committed to trying to walk that journey, because they're super busy just like all of us are. And, you know, if they sat down with everybody that just reached out and asked the question individually, it's just not efficient. But if you join like that's the MSP CyberX, you can be a member and start to collaborate with other people besides me. And they ask all these types of questions.
Yeah. Something that I feel like is very important that we learned throughout our journey. Maybe we wish we knew before, but I think this is something that we actually did right without realizing how good it was. But then now on the back end, we're like, oh, thank God we did it that way, which is we did not have any clients that were in the process of like CMMC, getting ready, certified for CMMC level 2, getting prepped, until we had walked through it ourselves. Like, and we basically, once Bobby felt comfortable, he had the scheduled date for our, assessment ourselves as an MSP. That's like really around that time, like what he was saying, that's when we turned on the spigot of like, hey, like we will take you in and we will help you. We just did it ourselves.
Yep.
Obviously, there's always going to be first clients for it because we have to start somewhere. But there's a lot of people that try to do, we call it on our podcast, the like marriage counseling approach for CMMC, which is like where an MSP is doing it like for the first time, with their client and figuring it out for the first time. I've had many clients that have come to me and said, like potential leads that have said, we were kind of sketched out about our MSP because they were asking for consulting from the consultant that we found for CMMC. They were asking us
all the time. We get
to
that all the time.
pay for them to get consulted to learn CMMC so that they could walk us through it. That that is a little bit sketchy,
Yeah.
And Bobby took a lot of money, I mean, it was a lot of money and he wasn't getting it back at that time. And the reason that he was doing that is because he felt like it would be wrong to do the marriage counseling approach, And I feel like that was really good on him. And I wish that more people did that, because some MSPs that don't necessarily know how to do it right, they can fumble the bag for their client. And that's awful.
You can
So,
stretch your client along for too long before
yeah.
you realize, I don't want to do this. And then you cut them loose. And now you've really put
Now
them
they
in a
have
bad
2
situation.
months to get
Yeah.
CMMC level 2
Absolutely.
certified, and they're going to lose their
The
high
cost
bid.
question. I see where that's going.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, this is let's get right into it. I mean, David brings it up. What are we talking here? You talked about this is a huge investment. I love this slide, upfront and hidden costs. I love this.
Yeah, I would have loved to have known that before I started. One of the things that we did, my leadership team, thank God I've got a really good leadership team. And like, you've got to be willing to pivot and work hard
Yes.
at this, and you got to have a good leadership team. One of the things that we decided is we were going to earmark at least 6 figures. I earmarked over 200K. So I even went as high as 250 and said, okay, I'm going to set this aside. And that's not my goal to spend it. I obviously want to do less than that.
Yeah.
But when I realized that it was going to take me forever if it was just me doing it part-time, and I'm like, I need to bring on somebody full-time. So now I bring on a full-time person that's all they do, right? They're not doing other tickets. That person is working solely on the documentation. That's Adam. And then I worked on architecture piece, and I basically kind of fired myself as a CEO for about 9 months to a year, and worked with my leadership team to kind of how to do that. So I did the technical design and implementation piece working with Adam, and he did the documentation piece, and it took us 8 months to do that. And then you've got the Azure cost, everything else. Like, if you aren't budgeting at least 150K to do this, you are not going to succeed probably. And the reason why I say that is it's going to take time, and that's not like just stroke a check like in one thing. It's staffing, time, licensing,
exactly,
working with your attorney, because your normal MSP agreements don't speak 32 CFR, right? They're not going to be written in such a way that are going to properly inherit the responsibilities, because in the audit, it talks about that the auditor is going to look at the MSP's agreement and say, okay, are you on the hook for this stuff in your agreement? Show me where in here you're not. So you have no legal requirement that says you have to do what you're telling us that you're supposed to do for the client. Well, no. Okay, they got a problem there, because the government wants to see that responsibility fall on the shoulders clearly, legally, for the MSP. So you've got to make sure your agreements are lined up right. You've got to make sure that your policies are lined up right. You got to do all of those things, and that all takes time and money to do. So if you're not allocating at least $150,000 of that you can pull from as you're doing that, I don't know how you could do it. It's really, really tough to do it for anything less than that, I would think.
So I mean, I think that's the splash of cold water. But let's ask the other part of David's question here. Like you were pointed out, I mean, this is a bet. This is an investment, and now you're starting to see returns in terms of that growth and everything. Do you have, and feel free to be, I hate to put you on the spot for specifics here, but do you have a rough estimate in terms of when you expect to be recouping some of that, or any goals around that?
Yeah, we're already we've already hit it in the first 3 months. Yeah. As far as returning back on the investment.
Yes,
of what we've
correct.
Had to do.
Yeah.
So we're already net positive for what we had over the going from, I guess I'm going off the top of my head here, like November timeframe to this time, we've already flipped back around.
Yeah. In
that time frame, just from sales opportunities, revenue generated from those types of things as we're going through bringing on new clients, because there's a lot of CMMC is project, right? So when the client comes on, almost invariably, what's so interesting is they have these contracts they've been doing for years that say they have to have this system already built, and they come to us and they literally have nothing. Most everybody has nothing. If you did a score assessment of them, the maximum I think you can get is -320. And most people are hovering somewhere around that when they come to us. And so they're starting from scratch, even though they were supposed to have been doing this for years. And so because of that, you've got projects, alignments, policies. So there's all these project CapEx costs that they have that just inject that into the, financial bottom line of the organization for us as we go to do that, because they have to do that. That's just a reality. They have to get all these pieces done.
Oh man, this is bringing up all sorts of my gears are turning. I'm thinking about like how you're pricing things, like all that stuff. But I want to be mindful of time here, and I want to make sure we leverage Cody too, because Cody's taking time. And so to do that, to bring Cody up here, can you all talk about maybe this fits into the hidden cost portion of it? You mentioned about having to look at your tools again. And you had to make some changes there. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So one of the biggest powers, the superpowers of MSPs, are the tools and the efficiency that they can leverage out of that, right? That is a huge deal, right? The more you can do with less for an MSP, the more efficient you can be. You can be more competitive in the market pricing wise. MSPs have been thinking that for years. And so they've been trying to squeeze as much as they can out of every tool they go to do that. Well, when you go to CMMC, you've got to think about where that data is going, what rights. A lot of those tools get slid off the table. And what does that do? That drives the cost up, because the efficiency isn't there anymore. We're not using the tools we're used to working with. That's why we're so excited to hear that you guys are coming into the FedRAMP market, because FedRAMP in the CMMC ecosystem is a straight inheritance. Like they can accept the inheritance. So they're not worrying about, that you have non-US based citizens accessing ITAR environments. They're not worrying about those types of things, because they know, because you have your FedRAMP requirement, those are all being addressed appropriately through that process. So, and so now it's not a question of whether or not this tool is compliant. Now the question is, how are you compliantly enforcing it, right? It's a different conversation. It's still a requirement that falls on you as an MSP. But now you've got a tool that's got powerful automations, because Intune is slow on its response. Scripting stuff takes time for you to do. It's just such a pain. So to have a tool like that can do those types of activities, and you can have much faster response and a lot more automation control around it than what you're used to in Intune is. We're doing backflips. Super excited.
Yeah. Well, let's we'll glad to hear that. And let's get Cody up here. So Cody's gonna again, he's working with a lot of clients on the Fed side. Or prospects rather, too, that now that we've gone through this process, it opens up opportunities for Ninja, and it also is really, I think, a big takeaway for everyone watching here. It puts us in a position to be helpful. So you're not having to search for a different tool, but we are very much early in this process too, and working with Bobby and others, we want to know more about how can we be as helpful as possible. But Cody, with all that, I'll kick it over to you. You want to talk through a little bit about what the journey we've been going on?
Yeah, sure thing. And Bobby, thanks for all the good words there around our tooling, and it's really good to have some MSPs on here that are that are going through this process that completely understand this and are, willing to share all these insights with other folks in that community. NinjaOne, I mean, we've been supporting MSPs for, as long as we've been a business. That's kind of where our, the entire platform started. And so knowing that CMMC's out there, there's a lot of MSPs that are working with that, CUI data. That's, it's something that's only going to get more strictly enforced as time goes on. And so we also, realized that there was probably a bit of a need for this software as well in the federal government, internal IT side. And that's really what kind of led us down this FedRAMP path. And so it's very much like the CMMC undertaking, very stressful at times and a lot of process, a lot of audit, a lot goes into that. But what we get out of the backside of that is, a platform that MSPs can rely on because we've already gone through very similar testing. We kind of understand that pain a little bit. And, we're continuously monitored. So it's something that the federal government themselves have actually checked off as secure enough to host that data and meeting all the security requirements already. So it's something that you can use to demonstrate through your audit process. Hey, these are the tools that we're using, and this is exactly the way that we're going to be operating. Here's what that tool's doing for us, and we can actually show that versus just saying, it's being done. So
one thing I think it's important to point out is your status is that you're ready. So if you tried to take that to an auditor right now for your CMMC, they would not accept that, as ready does not constitute the next step up is not ready. It's I just went blank.
In process.
Is it moderate and equivalent?
No, it's when you've actually
already had it. It's in process, right?
So our next step that we're going into right now. So we do have a sponsoring agency that we're working with. So we're actually kind of in the process of getting that sponsorship letter. And once that hits the FedRAMP Program Management Office, that's going to change our status. We're going to move up into the in-process status, which means that we're currently working with an agency. We're currently working with an agency that's getting us through the agency sponsor process. Right. There's a couple different ways to get FedRAMP. We're taking the agency sponsorship route. And then, of course, the entire, all the way done, well, really the beginning, if you will, is the beginning is the end.
Right. We relate.
We'll be fully is authorized. So once we have an authority to operate in hand from our sponsoring agency, that's when our platform will show up in the FedRAMP marketplace, at least as fully authorized. We'll have a full SSP report that's accessible by other agencies. So anybody that does want to kind of look at our standard security controls and processes, that's completely put together.
Can't wait for that.
The end, the end is the beginning, because once you hit that ETO status, that's when the continuous monitoring starts, and then every update, everything that we do is completely. We have to be transparent and completely update the documents with the new controls, the new processes for every feature and everything we add from that point. So the end is the beginning.
That's great.
Absolutely. And I mean, but great call out, Bobby. I mean, in terms of what we can provide now, I mean, this is, a big part of that, what we're trying to show. So basically getting the information ready that we can hand off to customers who then can give them the proper way to talk with their auditors about it, I think is what we're aiming for.
Well, I can't tell me how many vendors that come to me all the time. They're like, okay, we'll be authorized by, I can tell you how many, maybe 2 or 3 vendors I can think of off the top of my head that told me they would be authorized by the end of last year. They're not, right? They're not even in the ready status to ready to start, right? So when you have a vendor like this, especially with an RMM, there's a lot of things to think about. What Cody's talking about is not only can you say, okay, NinjaOne is patching, but what's the way that in my test methodology would I validate that it's patching correctly? How are you going to do that? And how are you going to do it for your clients? How are you going to get alerts, right? So just because they have a compliant method doesn't mean that you have the right method to validate for you internally. So that's where NinjaOne's giving you a shot across your bow that they're coming, right? So start looking at those types of things if you're really wanting to get in the space about how you could do that with NinjaOne, so that when they are in their authorized state, you're not starting from scratch at that point, because that's going to take some time to go through and work. So start working on that now so that you can start getting yourself properly aligned, so that you're not now at the beginning, again, like Cody's talking about having to take months to get ready of how you're going to approach that and think about how you're going to do your
Yeah.
SSP and other stuff, because it's a huge advantage that they're giving you, that they're coming, so that you can start working on that now, because that's what we're doing.
Somebody did ask though what the connection is between FedRAMP and
Yeah.
CMMC, I feel like a little bit ago. And I do feel like it is really important for us to clearly kind of say that in the 32 CFR final rule, there is a nice little diagram that many people argue over, but it does have the words of FedRAMP in it. It talks about CSPs, cloud service providers, and then it talks about ESPs, external service providers, and it talks about security protection data, and it talks about where those intersect, and CUI, controlled unclassified information, intersect to where that CSP or the cloud service provider is required to have FedRAMP. And that is where, with that diagram and that information, is where a lot of the CSPs or vendors and cloud service providers were taken off the table for CMMC. So that is why it is very, very cool to hear that awesome vendors like NinjaOne are going through this journey and have been on the process of this FedRAMP journey to be able to be used, because it definitely will benefit implementers for sure.
Like CMMC doesn't require FedRAMP. It requires it if your cloud provider like NinjaOne could potentially or does ingest CUI into its system. If it does, that's where that FedRAMP absolutely comes in, and you have to have that. But if you have a SIM tool that's only grabbing logs and you can validate it's not doing that, it's a different conversation. But NinjaOne, it has such power to it, and what it has, like I don't see how you could avoid not being FedRAMPed, because of you start neutering it in its abilities if you start trying to dumb it down where you can't do those types of things, and you're losing its power. But you guys leaned in on that to go FedRAMP, which is going to now allow you to have that agent on there and providing that access and capabilities, which is huge.
Yes.
Yeah. Kaleigh, so we've got about 5 minutes left, and so I want to make sure there's some great questions that have come in. And Ryan was asking if you had that link handy to that diagram, and he had also asked a question before. Oh, thank you. And he had also asked this question before, saying that according to his research, he didn't think that there was reciprocity. There we go. I nailed it. But is that your understanding too, Bobby?
No. If you have your FedRAMP, if you're a FedRAMP authorized, your tool, you just have to have your evidence package. The auditor's going to look at that and go, "You're good." You're good from the perspective of they don't have to say, "Is CUI coming into this? If it is, flag on the play." Right? That system is allowed to receive it. It doesn't mean it's a straight pass. That's where, okay, I'm going to do patching through NinjaOne. Okay, great. Validate how you're doing that. You've got to prove that you're doing. Just because it can doesn't mean you pass. It means that you still have to be doing it correctly. But the conversation's different. The auditor's not concerned that system may be ingesting CUI. They're not worried about that, because your system, because of its FedRAMP authorization, is capable of handling that, and there aren't concerns around that. That's where that kind of comes in, if that's helpful.
It's definitely.
Yeah, go ahead, Cody. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know as far as the NIST SPs, they're different documents there, but a lot of the control families that FedRAMP is based on is actually over in that 800-171. So you're going to see a lot of reciprocity between those. So they map very, very closely, both FedRAMP and CMMC, as far as the security controls and stuff in place. So
yeah, and if you look at the 32 CFR, like that chart that Kaleigh's talking about, it talks about the requirements for FedRAMP. So they're not there for funsies. The reason why it's there is because they're wanting to see that. Also, 252-204-7012, that DFARS requirement calls out for the FedRAMP, either equivalency or FedRAMP, because of that data that might exist in that container. So the auditors know that, and they're looking for that when they're coming in for that requirement.
And Kaleigh has been very kind to track down both the link to the PDF and the page 142. Amazing. Thank you so much.
You get used to finding these, when you get a lot of arguments about it, you do get used to finding where these things are, for sure.
Incredible.
Something you didn't cover Cody had on the screen, and I don't think some of you may be aware of it, is like they're building a good evidence package for y'all that when you go to accept this, like it's going to have a matrix that shows where the system, like NinjaOne, is expecting to be compliant around, so that you can start thinking to yourself, okay, I can use this tool to accomplish these tasks. Okay, so now you can start digging in deeper about how you might be able to validate that during your audit, right? Because the auditors want to know that. Just because it's capable of doing it doesn't mean that you're doing it correctly. And those are two very different things. You got to make sure you're doing both right.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Bobby. And then, so to answer a couple more questions while we've got time here. So there's one from Dustin. Hey, Dustin, thanks for joining and asking this question. So, okay, yeah, the $1 million question. When does Ninja get that FedRAMP authorization?
I'm curious. That's a great question.
Yeah. I mean, as we've heard from Bobby, I mean, these things can take a lot of time, and you know, it's hard. We don't want to get in that habit of saying, oh yeah, it's going to be by this date, and then that doesn't happen for some reason, and then that causes, you know, a whole thing. And so I'll let Cody maybe speak something. I don't think we're going to be able to give you an exact date there. We are in process. But will it require migration to a new tenant? I think I can answer that one. Cody, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the answer there is yes, because we had to make a lot of fundamental changes to be able to meet requirements.
And
that's
also,
absolutely correct.
I'm sorry, I'm taking a little of your thunder here, but it's a good thing that it's separate, everybody, just so that you want to know that. It is the reason why you don't want to mix and match your clients that are not in the CMMC space with those that are, from the perspective of there's certain lockdown processes and procedures. And if you're mixing and matching, I don't know how you would separate those. So I wouldn't look at that as a bad thing.
No,
but go ahead,
it's a
Cody,
good thing.
Yeah, no, that's. I mean, you hit the nail on the head, both Jonathan and Bobby there. It is a separate instance, and for that exact purpose, to make sure that the government data stays separately, or anything that's going to be touching that tenant stays separate from the clients that really don't need that.
And I'm sure the cost is going to be higher, so you don't want to be mixing and match. And then also the auditor is going to want to validate, because sometimes what people will do is they'll be like, oh, I'm using this cloud tool. And the auditor's going to be like, that's cool. I do see it on the marketplace. How can you prove to me that you're using that version? Right. And so it's hard for them to know unless you've like certified the whole thing, which is very difficult to do without changing. I'm not even sure how an organization would even do that.
And then Josh asked another question. Is it going to be only available to government organizations? I mean, Cody, do you have any insight there? I mean, my guess is no, but there obviously there could be, it's a different SKU, like there's different maybe requirements around it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, so there is different SKUs there, but we do have a lot of our MSP customers that work with us today are, you know, actively looking, or, you know, in the process of migrating some of their clients over to our FedRAMP instance as well. So it is separate, but it is available to, you know, the federal government, of course, as well as state, local government agencies, and then MSPs that work with, you know, government customers and have those CMMC requirements.
All right, everybody, we're right at time. I think if there's one last question, maybe we can get these folks just one more. So, what a great opportunity! I mean, again, I can't stress this enough. The fact that Bobby, you, Kaleigh, and the rest of the team in Axiom have gone through this process, but not only that, but that you are sharing so much and really raising awareness around it, sharing your learnings. It really is such a great example of the MSP community and how, you know, the rising tide can help everyone. I just can't say enough about it. I love that you're doing it, and I appreciate you all taking the time to do it in general and to do it specifically here today.
It's been
Thank
been
you.
fun, and the more MSPs,
it's been fun.
I mean, I love it. I love talking about it.
I can't with this guy. This is why you put him. You said this whole thing. It's 4 years, $250,000. It's been fun. You know, just put that on a shirt and sell it.
I tell you.
I can't.
But the more MSPs that get in this space, the more we're talking about this, the more vendors are going to come in this space, the more consistent the easier it will be to implement this for clients, the less cost will be involved, the easier it'll be to manage. I mean, none of the C's or M's in CMMC stand for cheap or easy. And so it's freaking hard. And so we just need more good vendors that are coming in the space, and we need more MSPs coming in the space that are serious and are doing it right and are taking the sacred responsibility of doing this, because there's a lot of risk if you come in there and you're not doing it right, that you're opening yourself up and your clients. So you got to take this super serious.
Yeah.
This is not funsies. This is real stuff.
No, I appreciate that. And I mean, I think that's been loud and clear in terms of your message. You know, this was a significant investment. You have to be all in. And with all that said, I mean, there are resources where people are there to help, whether it's vendors, whether it's other folks who are doing the auditing or consulting, or also folks like yourselves too. One thing I wanted to call out, just in case folks weren't aware of it, and this goes for Ninja customers, but also anyone, whether you're using Ninja or not, there's our Trust Center page, and that's an easy way to get in touch with our compliance team to go and see get documentation about our various compliance and controls and things like that. So I just wanted to make sure that folks were aware that existed. And it's a great way to get the conversation started. May not have all the answers there, but great place to start.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And with that, I mean, I know Josh really appreciated this. He's like one of the many MSPs that are in our community that are definitely looking to go down this path too. So thank you, Bobby, and thank you, Kaleigh, and thank you, Cody, for jumping on too.
Yeah, hit us up on LinkedIn. I put in the private chat our link to our podcast. Maybe y'all can drop it in there. Follow it. It's a good way to get leveled up, learn things quickly. Also, MSP CyberX is a great place to get connected, because then when you step into that space, it's not just me. Like, there's lots of other MSPs that are doing it that can provide a lot of great insight. So that's a good way. Because if you reach out to me, like, dude, we're getting hammered right now, so we're pretty busy. So I don't, we just don't have a lot of time to sit down individually. But if you're there at the CyberX, that now there's more than just me that's coming to the table that can provide a lot more insight and can really help level up organizations that are serious about doing it.
Yeah. Thank you, Jonathan and Cody, for having us
We
on.
love it.
And
we love you.
we are encouraging you on the sidelines of your climb as well.
Very much.
So keep going.
Well, thank you, everybody. And here's to getting to the end, which is actually the beginning. Until next time, we'd love to have you back on. Until then, thank you, everybody, for joining, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care, everybody.
Mm-hmm. Bye.